everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ljubljana Talks. And this time with Gorazd and Jan, we are at Conventa Crossover event in Ljubljana. That's a rare event. And we are recording here at Ljubljana Castle, and we have a fantastic guest, Goc O'Callaghan.
Hi.
Welcome. You are the co-founder and director of the ArcTanGent Festival and the strategic experience consultant at UBQex. So there's a lot of ground to cover there. It's your first time to Conventa Crossover.
It is, yes. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's lovely having you, and I mean the stuff that you are involved with and the stuff that you're researching as well is fascinating. So let me start with a very simple question, actually. How do you see the life between being a co-founder and director of a festival and at the same time doing strategic consultancy?
It's all about experience. Experiences matter. Wherever there are people, there is an experience. So by running a music festival, I'm bringing together 12,500 people every year and building a community on a farm with unorthodox artistry as the lineup. But in a strategic consultancy capacity, I'm advising other people that are curating events and experiences to best bring their audiences together to create experiences that matter for them.
But what is your definition of good and bad experience?
That's a very good question. It's a very intangible answer because it's so personal to each and every individual, and there are different motivational factors that help determine whether an experience is a good one or a bad one. However, it's about that residual feeling inside of you. So if you've had a transformative experience, it's instigated a change within you, and that change might not be straight away. It may take some time for it to resonate with you and for the memories to start to formulate and come out in the process of storytelling. But a good experience leaves an impact on you, instigates a change, and means you want to talk about that experience from that point forward.
Very good. Is it true that the church is actually the biggest event organizer in the world and they're really good in creating experiences?
That's, again, a very, very subjective question. But yes, I think, if you look at places like Mecca that are bringing 3 million people together for one prayer, indisputably that is a huge event operation with some serious crowd dynamic considerations at play. I wouldn't want to be in charge of that, just to be clear.
Goc, before we were talking about the fact that you're also working on a PhD and you're trying to quantify the experience. And of course, how did you decide to measure the experience, and did you do it at the festival, and how did you take that into that work?
So there is a backstory to this which I will give you as short as possible version of. I grew up in a little wooden house in the middle of a forest, and it was my dream from the age of 7 to create memories for millions of people. And being so young, I didn't know how I was going to do that, so I started throwing parties. And the parties were great fun, but it was the stories and the memories that people had afterwards that to me was important. So I wanted to find a way that I could measure that impact. And that has set me on this pursuit of being an experiential producer, co-founder of the festival, a strategic consultant, and now in my academic studies, I'm looking at ways that we can measure the intangibility of experiences. So this could be your residual happiness factor, this could be the transformation that you undertake, it could be your psychological safety levels, it could be the way that you feel that you can participate, it could be the connections that you've built, the community that you've become a part of. There are some very complicated algorithms and mathematical and scientific approaches to this, but ultimately it results in whether or not this person has been transformed and what that means for them from a very personal perspective.
So your research would be done through interviews or through a selective questionnaire that you were using?
I don't believe that questionnaires give you meaningful data because of something called memory recall bias. So I've been using a neuroscientific experiment at ArcTanGent to measure in real time people's immersion or frustration with their experience at the festival. So this aggregated data gives us an overall view of how well people enjoyed the performances on the main stage or our second stage, the yokai, or in the VIP bar or the merch area. And if there are dips in people's immersion, it could be that the band didn't resonate with them, or there was something going on site that impacted their experience, such as the weather or perhaps an operational element that needs more attention. But you can also look at the psychological safety level. So sometimes the bigger the gap between your psychological safety and your immersion, that's where a better experience happens. The saying that life begins on the edge of your comfort zone. Sometimes if you feel slightly more unsafe, your experience is better because you're pushing yourself. So this has only been a pilot experiment this year. So I'm unpicking all the data at the moment with the neuroscience team, but we're going to deploy the experiment further next year, not just at ArcTanGent, but hopefully across other festivals. So that's one measurement of experience.
I have so many questions. The first one is actually, do you agree that events are also universal language as music actually? And if you know how to play well, you get immediate response. It's like rock and roll concerts or whatsoever, you know exactly when the public is happy, Mm-hmm. You can feel it, it's in the air. What can you say about it? Are we good in that? Is there any connection with music in our business?
Definitely. I mean, using ArcTanGent as a case in point, we have around a quarter to a third of our audience are international guests. Mm-hmm. So the only common language on site is often the music. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A large percentage of our bands also don't have lyrics. So it is purely about the music. Mm-hmm. And you can see people that have never met before, arm in arm or elbow to elbow or head to head sometimes, just mm-hmm. enjoying the music. So that emotional connection, because mm-hmm. people have invested their time to grow to love that music, mm-hmm. is then escalated there with everybody else around them. It's a community of people with a set of unwritten rules that everybody understands through tacit knowledge. They know how to behave. Mm-hmm. They know what they want out of that. So I think if we're talking about more corporate events and experiences, to have some very carefully choreographed music mm-hmm. that matches your event can really tie those people together. It can act as a trigger to stimulate that community experience mm-hmm. and tie people together. So I think music tapping into one of the 42 senses, not 5, is a very strong
42?
Metric. 42 senses,
wow.
not 5.
Can you tell us more about that? Just a little bit more.
So there are the 5 senses that we all know, and there are 3 additional senses that should be considered within experience design. But you could argue that there are 42 senses if you weave together all the different threads of how they interconnect and how that unlocks certain feelings and emotions inside of us.
This conversation is going, again, as we often do, in a completely different direction as we planned, or a little bit. The stuff that we're talking about reminds me of the book Social. Are you familiar with that? It basically says that human capacity to be social, socialize, interact, communicate with great efficiency is basically why not just the IQ is what makes us smart. How would you say that creating a festival, creating a community, creating this mutual experience that you're describing, which is a non-verbal communication, how do you see that being designed within the festival that you're organizing?
I don't think you can design a community as such. Okay. What you can do is design the environmental framework in which that community can evolve. So we started as a small 3,000 cap event, and we've now grown to 12,500 people. And people come back because of the friendly nature of everybody being there. The unique thing about ArcTanGent is the music is obscure. Okay. It's unorthodox. So a lot of our audience come from marginalised communities. And I think if you've been in a marginalised community, you've had some hardship in your life. And therefore people turn up there knowing that everyone's there for the mutual love of the music. And that is their main motivational factor. If you look back to why we gather, historically, it was a tribal instinct. It was our need to survive. It was this evolutionary process that would allow us to hunt for food, to build shelter, and that communal gathering was a necessity. And I think that necessity still stands today, but it's in a form of escapism from the restraints of everyday life with the pressures of, working, family life, all those sorts of things. So the escapism element of a festival helps to build that community, but only if the environmental factors are put together in the right way.
So, would you say that this is actually a kind of a inner compass that you follow in creating this, and is that also the right way to create the emotional arc of an event?
I think it comes down to like a cyclical learning. So we put on the event for the first year. We thought we knew exactly what that event was going to be, but we hadn't perceived that there was going to be an international audience interest there. We then listen to our audience, we take that feedback, and we try and build that into the next year's festival. Being independent by nature, we're reliant on a lot of goodwill from volunteers to help us build the site. And they're often people that love the event as much as we do, if not more than we do. So it's through their commitment to the event that this community builds. So it's kind of a subsidiary of what we've done. Again, the environmental factors have allowed for that community to build, but it's this, for me, it's this idea that I don't own ArcTanGent, we own ArcTanGent. So whether you're somebody who's working, volunteering, an audience member, somebody who supports us from afar by watching the videos afterwards, that's what builds the community. It's people wanting to see something that is otherwise slightly obscure succeed.
With your history in forest, what we can learn from Mother Nature in our business, what can you say about it? Can we learn something, or?
Of course we can. Again, 42 senses, not 5. So consider how the environment in which you're in can impact how you feel. We're surrounded by trees here, which is instantly more calming. The beauty of Ljubljana, where we are today, with the leaves turning autumnal and the smells that come from that and the freshness of the air, it changes how you feel. So again, I'm going to implore people to consider sensory design as part of their experience design best practice, and look into nature for things like colour palettes, sounds, the feeling of the cobbled stones under your feet, or the crunchy leaves under your feet. It changes an experience in a way that we perhaps don't immediately recognise, but can have a very big impact on part of our transformation that happens afterwards.
So many small things at the end too, it helps in the general experience. But this inclusiveness of your event, it's obvious that it's inclusive. How you actually create that, or you believe that your festival will become more exclusive in the future?
I think it's
a little bit strange, I would say, dilemma. But what is your opinion about it?
I think it comes down to the word of mouth advertising, which is the strongest advertising power, in my opinion. If somebody has a good experience and they go and tell somebody else, they might then feel they want to participate in that. And again, it comes down to this memory creation and the stories that we tell. We've evolved through storytelling. So if we can create an environment where somebody has a very good story to tell, somebody else will mirror that emotion through hearing that story, and therefore will be more inclined to come and experience that for themselves.
There's a lot to unpack there. The question that I would have is probably the most impactful experiences are the ones that we call life-changing experiences. But is there a practice that you've done or created the environment for it to come to fruition, where you employed certain tools and practices that had an effect that was beyond what you expected it to be?
I think the best way for me to answer that is to allow for individuals to take a personalised route through their experience. So I could not design the festival, for example, for 12,500 people on a granular level. It's not possible. I can't ever understand every single push-pull factor that is going to impact on somebody's experience. However, if at certain decision-making points, I can allow these individuals to choose what they would prefer to do, it feels like the event has been curated for them, and therefore that will unlock something inside of them that makes it feel like their time has been well spent, and in turn that will provide the opportunity for transformation to happen.
If we have unlimited budget for you and we give you Ljubljana as a canvas, what would you create here in our city?
This is possibly the most exciting question I've ever been asked in an interview. I would utilise nature. I would utilise AKC, the artistic hub that's here. I would encourage people to step outside of their comfort zones to some extent, to experience something that they wouldn't normally have. I would want to combine music, food, I'm a bit bored of the term immersive because it's overused and being diluted, but immersive experiences that enable people to fully understand Ljubljana, but also to build a community that can't be forecast. So it would be a combination of a city tour meets music festival meets inspirational talkers such as we have at Crossover these few days, and just, I don't know, unlock everything in the city and use local people to offer these insights, but also allow people from outside to come in and, I mean this positively, disrupt Ljubljana to unlock some of the things that you might not see behind the surface.
Art Summit?
Well, Heart Summit is one event that we had this year that actually kind of did that in its own way. It was the so-called well-being project, and they created their own spaces all around city, and did activities very, very much connected with the local community. It was a fascinating event in this regard, and it's only after an event that you see, we could have done more, or we could have done this, or we could have done that. But I think it was all in all a very, very interesting new experience for us as a destination. But if we go from, let's say, a festival kind of an event, and we say, how can we translate that into a corporate event? How would you do that?
I think they're not as different as they might seem on surface level. So for a festival, for example, we choose to stagger our musical programming so that you have as few conflict as possible. So often when I go to a conference, there are two talks that are on at the same time that I can't see because they're in the same time slot. So by having a slight alternation of timings can mean that you can optimize the amount of talks that your audience get to go and see. Providing the additional spaces, so using a festival again for an example, the bar areas become very important for that community building. So having the breakout spaces for people to meet and talking, it's a bit like the idea that you have a meeting, but the actual meeting happens in the pub afterwards over a pint. That's when you secure the kind of financial deal. So providing those additional spaces within the programming so that there is the gaps to allow for that time for people to build those communities. And I think using Crossover as an example, the dinner last night was a perfect example of that, getting to meet people and break the ice so that when you turn up to the conference, you've got a familiarity there. But again, the personalisation, allow people to navigate their own path through, whether it's in a muddy field or whether it's in a beautiful castle, to take from that experience the things that best resonate with them to allow for that transformation afterwards.
Yeah, very interesting. There is a lot of buzzwords in our business. We are using them without knowing what is the real meaning of it. What is the buzzword which you really hate,
Immersion is so overused at the moment. You put a brightly coloured light and 5 people in a room and you pump some smell into it and suddenly it's an immersive experience.
Well, of course, it's floodlights.
Yeah, it's just I'm so bored of the use of that term. But also festival is another example. Everything is victim of festivalisation at the moment, and unfortunately what that means for our industry is it's diluting the value of those terms. Because those aren't festivals, those aren't immersive experiences. So this is where we're experiencing a lot of imagination poverty with event-based literacy. So we need to make sure that the terminology that we're using to describe our events and experiences is used fittingly for what is being delivered. And that also helps manage audience expectation.
We cannot escape from AI discussion too. It's one of the buzzwords too. But I just learned that OpenAI is hiring a lot of content, professional content writers, not actually opposite. So what is this actually meaning for the creativity of our business? For the creativity we believe is a human. What is your thought about it?
I think it's unavoidable that AI is going to be a very strong factor in our industry moving forward, and I think we should embrace the use of AI, but with caution. I think AI creates, humans curate, so we can use AI to help with some of the generation of content, but we should then be curating that to make sure it's not a copycat of other events or experiences. We should almost treat AI a little bit like an intern. You wouldn't allow an intern to write your entire pitch proposal and then go and pitch it or run your company. So if you treat AI similar to like an intern, you can let it do the bulk of the work for you, but then with careful curation, you can ensure that your output is optimized, is unique, and is very fitting for what it is you're trying to achieve.
That's a very, very beautifully put, curated sentence. I really like that. Create, curate, great. The question that also is one of those that I wanted to ask you, and it's about when does an event become, such as yours, would you say that it has surpassed the just being a festival and it's now a movement?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think the answer to that question lies in who you ask that question to. For me to say it's a movement would be very self-congratulatory.
Well, congratulations then. Yeah.
I have a lot of integrity questions around running the festival and what that means for me. But I think if you were to talk to some of the artists that have evolved in this festival environment that perhaps wouldn't have had the platform to grow to the scale they have done, for them it has been a movement. If you talk to some of the kids that came to ArcTanGent when they were 15, 16 that are now playing the stages, for them it's been a huge movement for them. It's been a shift in their life that is unchangeable. And for the community, there are a lot of people that come to ArcTanGent and they call it Christmas Day for guitar geeks. They get excited about it. People say they come on their annual pilgrimage to Fernhill Farm, which is where the festival is held. So there are a lot of movement-based answers to that. Again, subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. The movement is amongst those who agree with each other, and so I guess you can be proud about what you've done and what you've created. I mean, just the fact of how many people gather at the same spot at the same time is impressive on its own. Because you're so entangled with the music industry, there is the question of which part of it has fallen asleep. If you think of it, what is the part of the music industry that has fallen asleep, and is it a good opportunity for the event designers?
The part of the music industry that has fallen asleep, and I say this knowing that there are a small group of people that are completely and utterly awake in this field as well, is the understanding of the importance of grassroots music venues, so where the emerging talent comes from. Our future headliners that will play all of the arenas and stadiums around the world, headline the biggest festivals in the world, have all started in these small independent venues of around 100 to 200 people. These venues are being closed globally because of residential developments and a lack of support for these cultural hubs that are so important to the music industry. There's a fantastic organisation in the UK called the Music Venues Trust, which are fighting to save these venues, that are working with big artists to help fund these venues that are often running on a shoestring budget. So I think there needs to be a global awareness of the importance of these small little dive venues. But that's where, the real creativity and where, going back to movements, where some real big movements will begin. And that's where communities are formed. And if we don't take care of these smaller independent venues, then there is no music industry. There are no festivals.
Very good point. Tomorrow we'll have another session of so-called discussion about flops in our industry, or as we call it, fuck-ups at events. Me and Jan will run that. So can you share some of your fuck-ups?
Well, you use a perfect word there. The first one was for the first year of ArcTanGent. We booked a headliner called Fuck Buttons, which meant that all of our social media adverts were blocked. And whilst musically they were a good booking for us, we hadn't considered the kind of editing and the safeguarding around the use of this. I haven't got here by following the rules, so I have a long list of fuck-ups, in your words. Being interviewed on the back of the main stage after the first year, having drunk a bottle of champagne, not realising I was being interviewed. That was a good one. I haven't Googled that interview. I did ArcTanGent 1 year with a broken foot, and I didn't realise for 6 weeks. Yeah, I've got a long list. I've had some...
Top. What about Burning Man? What do you think about Burning Man in comparison with your festival? Is there any comparison at all, or this is a stupid question? I don't know.
No, it's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
I think the underlying similarity is the community.
Yeah.
Burning Man started as a very small, independent gathering of people, like-minded people that wanted just to create something in the desert. And it's now become a huge, huge movement. Helen Gallagher, who was the former designer, is you're nodding as if you know her.
We know her. She was in this seat as you
wonderful.
are. Yeah.
She's an absolute powerhouse, and I think her visionary approach has made Burning Man into what it is. Now, I'm not putting myself in the same camp as Helen at all because she's outstanding, but it's that same determination and the dream to make something happen. So for me, my festival started in that little forest, getting things wrong, no event production knowledge, and has grown into ArcTanGent, and who knows what that will then morph into or what I do next. But Burning Man is so influential globally with all of the smaller burners that pop up, globally, and it's definitely one of those transformational experiences that once you've been to Burning Man especially, you're never the same again in the most positive way forward. Because
festivals, in a way, react to the social situation. From Woodstocks to Burning Man, you can see that they are created and curated in accordance to the social dynamics that are happening. You mentioned before the closing of the small venues. We know that there is a young generation that is going out in a different way. They hang out more at home. They don't consume as much alcohol. Of course, some do, but there is a underlying motif that we see with closing of some of the legendary clubs and pubs, and this is not just in Slovenia, this is also in Finland. It's all around. It's something that I've been quite passionate about figuring it out, because I think it changes also how music is produced, how music is created, AI and all that. How do you see these elements influence how you design your event?
We've certainly moved towards serving more alcohol-free products behind the bars, because there's a demand for that. We're increasingly seeing younger generations opt to bring dumb phones to the festival, so they're wanting to not be connected to social media, and for us that's a good thing. It's important for us that, again, listening to our audience and trying to put that feedback into what we do in future years is going to help us evolve that, because I'm not a 20-year-old kid anymore. And I was a 20-year-old kid when I started doing this type of thing. So I can't in a million years imagine what it's like to be a 20-year-old, but I have a set of ears, I have a brain, I have a desire to make this event useful for the younger generation. So I think in any experienced design world, having a diverse team will help to evolve that event into something that is suitable for multi-generations. I also think it's good fun to have a younger person work with an older person as like an exchange of skills. An older person can learn how to use a younger person's technology or a cultural understanding of what the upcoming trends are, but then a younger person can learn perhaps some of the business acumen that they need to be able to deliver this. So I think if the environment is correct, you can step out of imagination poverty by building a really interesting team with diverse skill sets that will push boundaries, react to those social situations, and create something different that then in turn builds a new community and drives the industry forward. That's true outside of festivals as well as festivals, I think.
Well, I can see sparks in your eyes. I can feel your energy. So what really motivates you after all these years of doing festivals? What can you say? What is your biggest motivation? I know this is a classical question at the end of our conversation, but it's really interesting because we can feel it, guys. It's really here, actually, the energy. Yeah.
I think my motivation remains the same as it did in that 7-year-old catalytic dream, which is to create memories for millions of people. And whilst I'm old enough and perhaps a little bit more jaded than when I first had that dream, I know that I personally can't create an event for millions of people, but I can help those that are creating events for lots of people, and the aggregated number of that is then millions of people. So I want people to use their time wisely, to consider it well spent, and get a return on experience that we all deserve.
Return on experience, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, we usually finish with some short questions to you. My first is tea or coffee?
Depends on the time of day.
Okay.
Rock music or techno?
Who says they have to be independent of each other? You should come to ArcTanGent.
There you go. I thought you were going to say depends on the time of the day.
Also true.
The sea or the mountains?
Now, that is possibly the hardest question for me to answer, because I love to surf, but I'm also very happy sat on top of a mountain. But I think it has to be the ocean.
Goc, thank you very much for all these answers. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed that. Stay tuned, guys. We are coming back soon with another great Ljubljana talk, and see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.